Right. Well, welcome to this episode of the Beautiful Life podcast. I'm here with Craig Noble today, and I'm really excited about this conversation, not only because this is the first podcast I've done for a while with somebody else, but also the subject is we're going to be talking about booze, about alcohol. And it's the first time I've talked about this subject on the podcast, and it's been a big thing in my life, actually, being alcohol free. So Craig, do you want to just introduce yourself and speak a little bit about who you are, what you do, and do that?
Yeah, so I am a former business guy. I grew up in traditional education, traditional college, traditional university, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, went and got jobs in corporate the world and in the United States, and had because I grew up in a home that was a dad that was a contractor. I went off and started my own business in construction, and then just never looked back. Always did something on my own, which I guess can be kind of stressful. I didn't realize at the time I was just doing what I was doing in terms of work, and had my first drink, because we're talking about drinking. Probably when I was a kid, drinking my dad's beer. Mom had a something. But never really thought anything of it. And then throughout my younger life, after university, during university, even in high school, now and then, not really even thinking about it. And it didn't really turn for the worse until one of the businesses I was running wasn't going well at all. And it was really stressful, to the point where I felt the stress, as opposed to just living, and it's just, life is stressful. And I ended up turning to it and using it at night to make myself feel better, and have dinner and go to sleep and get up and go to work the next morning. And it became almost an every night thing after a while, and got really, really slippery, and found myself asking questions. And a friend of mine introduced me to AA, and I'd done that for a number of years, not drinking and going back and forth to AA, and it just never really worked for me. The formality of it, I never really understood it. As much as I would ask people, in AA, they're very nice people, but they just like to say, keep coming back, and they like to say, don't drink today. And I'm more of a, inquisitive, curious, why is this happening? Why am I here? You guys are nice people, but why? And they just sort of laughed me off. And I don't think they meant to. I think it came off to me as, we know something you don't, and if you hang around with us long enough, you'll pick up on what we know, and you don't really need to know anything except keep coming back. And it never really worked for me. And that's sort of my history with it. I don't drink anymore. I crossed the line, so to speak. And my son and I had an experience with our neighbor a number of years ago that inspired this book. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. But that's kind of my history. Normal, I think, going from casually drinking to using it to, oh my goodness, what is this? I can't do without it, to trying to stop, wondering why I can't stop. Plenty of articles online, plenty of people seemingly available with information, but none of them were answering my questions. And I finally just, took it upon myself to figure it out myself. And the way that I did, it turned into this book. So I think that's a good background about me.
Yeah, it is. Thanks for that. And I've read your book. I've read it last week. And that's why we're having this conversation, because I suppose first, because I haven't really spoke to you about my feedback for the book. So I know you're going to be interested in that, because when we spoke before, you told me, you kind of was encouraging me to read. You need to read my book, because you just said it's written a certain way. And I kind of knew what you meant, but now I get it. Now after reading it, I get it. So what's it called? It's called Rethinking Drinking.
Yeah, I just like words, and I like the way words come together with paragraphs, and paragraphs turned into stories. So I chose Rethinking Drinking because it kind of rhymes. And then I put a tagline underneath it. That's the tagline is the influence that everyone's under, as sort of a catchy. What is he talking? What do you mean the influence that everyone's under? So you have to read the book to find out what I'm talking about. But now, with this big smile on your face, everyone has a relationship with alcohol, no matter, if they drink a lot, a little, or none at all. It's still everywhere, so there's still a relationship that everyone has.
Totally, even children, like it's massively eye-opening. And so I won't get ahead of myself. And your Instagram, because how we met was on Instagram as well, so I do follow some kind of sober accounts, not all now. I used to binge follow, but now I'm going all right. I've only following a few. You're one of them because of how straight you are. You share a lot of quotes, and it's like, whoa, absolutely, it's so relatable to me. So your Instagram is Rethinking the Influence, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
you can find my Instagram by my name, or by Rethinking the Influence. But you'll know you're in the right place when you see my picture in black and white in the corner, and then all of my tiles are in black and white. And it's a mixture of little sketches and words, but those are all black and white because I'm colorblind. So if it was in color, if it was in color, and the same thing with the book. If it was in color, it would confuse me, and I can't have any more stress in my life. So that's why, I'm one of the only Instagram accounts that's black and white, and it's kind of a selfish reason. I can't see it otherwise.
Wow, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. That's really fascinating, isn't it? So yeah, so you mentioned about, so I don't want to give too much away with the book really, but I suppose you can't. It's you can't, because there's a lot in there. And what I liked first of all is the length of it, as in it took me about an hour and a half to read it. It didn't take me very long to read, which is, we forget actually, because sometimes I like a good book, but actually with this, it didn't need to be longer. It was just brilliant. And so and the way it was written as well, I actually texted you, didn't I, when I started it, because I think this is a mixture though of my personal journey. That's why it kind of triggered me to tears, because you were like, why? But I think it was just, I haven't really gone back to my relationship with alcohol. I just don't drink now, and it's not in my life, and I don't really hang around with anybody, so it's not a thing. So I kind of just dove back in and into this whole subject. And so you mentioned it was it started with the story about your neighbor, and it was that just got to me. It really got to me because of related, but just sadness. My heart is well open at the minute, so it doesn't take much for me to just feel everything. And that's how it started off. And then of course the conversation with your son, so you going away, finding out more about alcohol, like you said, you want to know why, you're inquisitive and curious, and you want to know all these things. And then you found out, and it was all about how you then had a conversation with your son about it. And we can move on to that in a minute, because I want to hear from you. But I love how it's written, because I don't share a lot at the moment about alcohol on my social media. I do a little bit, and I'm probably quite judgmental actually, because like I've called it a poison before. I know you're different with that. And I've been really opinionated. But what I love about and one of the reasons why I haven't is because when I was drinking, or when I was trying to give up, anyone said anything about it would have triggered me. I would have just felt so bad about myself, even more, because that's the reason why I was drinking in the first place, mainly because I was miserable. So I've been really apprehensive, but it's something I do want to talk more about, especially because now, a big focus in the world at the moment is health, looking at our health. And yeah, I was just thinking about the influence that everyone is under with alcohol. It's big. So I don't know. I've written some notes here, but I don't want to be the one talking about it, but I'm really enthusiastic about it because of how non-judgmental the book was. I really do recommend it, and I genuinely recommend it, because I know there's a lot of people kind of teetering, maybe know that they want to start. And although I've read other books as well about this that I've explained before that really helped me, there's some angles that you come across from here, especially from the marketing point of view, and also the non-judgmental part of the back, like how everyone's so different. We've got alcohol, and we've got our behaviors and emotions and our lifestyles, and so there isn't just blatantly labeling it a poison like I do. It's probably not quite fair or necessarily accurate. What do you
Well,
think?
I mean, there's a lot that what you just said. I mean, I thought I almost interrupted you 100 times.
Please do it.
Because,
Please interrupt me,
no,
because I don't want to
I'm
keep on
I'm
speaking.
so I continue to be. I mean, I wrote this book 2 years ago, published it last year, and I'm still super excited about it. So when someone starts talking about this and we sound like we're on the similar page, I just want to jump in and
Good.
finish
Do that.
sentences. So,
Do it. I want
but
to do that.
the poison piece has to do with the judgment, and it the way that I explain it in the book is really from my heart and really did happen with my son, where, I used to drink and he's not grown up with me drinking. So he doesn't have that relationship with me. He's never seen that. His mother and I are no longer married, and his mother and her husband have beer and wine in the fridge. And he's taken pictures of their fridge before when he's much, much younger. Look what's in mom's fridge, dad. And I didn't know what to say. I don't really have anything to say, but I'm respectful of the way that she parents and the way that she lives. And most people live like that. Most people have beer and wine and whatever in their house. So to bring it back around to the judgment and the poison part, because I don't drink it, I wanted to be sure not to be disrespectful to the people that my son loves that do drink. So when he sees them drinking, not to think they're doing it wrong. So that's where I'm coming from. And then that turned into my perspective about everyone else. He and I used to live in a house, and we just moved to, we live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which is in the US. And we just moved from a house to like a luxury high rise that I wanted to deliver to him in his last year before he goes to college. And I've never lived in a community before. I've always lived in houses. So it's just, friends and family, and you come and visit and you leave. Well, we now live among other people that are kind of stacked on top of each other, if you will, in a sort of a high rise. And the pool is right here. And we go down and we're, in the pool and in the hot tub and visiting and everyone has a White Claw or a Tervis full of something, whatever. And he asked me about that, but he asks, he doesn't judge. So my point of view about the poison is just, I don't think it helps to understand and get along with people in their choices that are different than ours if we judge them. So I wanted to be really clear in my book that it's not for me. And I don't think it's going to be for my son. He's an athlete, so I don't think it's going to be part of his life. But if it's for somebody else, have at it. There's enough articles online when you start to have questions to get those questions answered. But for me to walk around and sort of sneer at people, I don't want him to have that experience. And I also have friends and family that continue to drink, and is it okay if of course, have as much as you want. It's your life.
Yeah.
So I come from the perspective about it being poison or judgment about it, that I just want everybody to get along, so I don't want them forcing their drink on me, and I'm not going to force my no thanks on them. That's where I'm coming from with it.
Yeah, no, and it's good. You inspire me a little bit, because I can get a bit judgmental, but not at other people's choices necessarily. It's more of I'm still in overwhelm and awe at this information. Not just from what you've written, because that's another eye-opening, like I said, I'm really excited about seeing all of this. One thing that came up, I don't think I knew how much the industry was. You said about spending 1.5, no, they make 1.5 trillion, and
so they're spending a handful of billions in advertising, right? 2 or 3 or 4 billion in a year in advertising, the entire industry, and they're making more than 1 trillion in revenue. And the way that I looked that up online was, that's a really big number. I wonder how I can relate that to a company that's selling, soda or whatever. So I found the same numbers for Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola as a company, which has, sodas and juices and waters, as an entire company spends the same amount as the entire liquor, alcohol industry, but makes $10 billion or $30 billion, right?
Yeah.
The multiple is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And then when I found that, and I figured out why that is, and we can talk about the different pieces of the book, where if you think about watching television and listening to songs, and I don't know how it is in the UK, but here in the US, there's a lot of songs on the radio and a lot of sitcoms on television where people are drinking or talking about drinking. And you know, and
Especially like country music, like me. It's
yeah,
full of
and
it.
there's no paid placement in that popular culture entertainment. It's just mention of alcohol. So I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, the day before, and she says when she sees someone drinking a glass of wine on television, she thinks about going to her fridge, but there's no mention of the brand. There's none. And I thought that must be how the alcohol industry gets from 3 or 4 billion in advertising to 1 point whatever trillion in revenue, and why Coca-Cola, because you can't just, people don't really respond to pop. I think they say pop in the UK, right? Is that what it's called? So right here it's mostly called soda. Soda is soda, water is water. But when you say wine or beer, it has a different sort of a connection. So no wonder the advertising revenue turns into huge sales.
Yeah. I mean, and you mentioned about this being right. So I want to go back to talking about how everyone is influenced, because the other thing I liked about your book as well, and this is why and especially the hard copy, which I haven't got, but you've shown me there, because it seems to be really funky with your, the quotation.
Can I hold it up?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so Rethinking, that is a really nice book, in it, the hard copy.
Yeah.
And so I've read it online, which is different, but it's so relatable. It's so relatable, as in the examples that you use. I mean, some of them made me laugh out loud, because I was like, oh my God, they're quite out there, but they are so true, because we've all had those stories of things that we've done. I can't remember why, because I shouldn't even be laughing, because it's almost horrifying. I've made peace with myself, my past self, with doing those things, and to laugh at them. But that's sort of the whole point, we laugh at them, don't we, even when we're carrying on drinking. And that was the first point that I picked up and wrote down about, you said, if your memories are good, we pat ourselves, drinking memories are good, we pat ourselves on the back. If our memories are bad, we downplay them, kind of bypass them and make excuses. And if our memories are ugly, we resolve them with blame. And it was a really good, that was the first screenshot I took, because do you want to interrupt?
You want me to interrupt? I'll just tell you that as I'm thinking about, think of any other product, that is on the market. If it creates, results that are slippery, that turn into, bad experiences or ugly experiences, why would it continue to grow? Why would the sales continue to rise? Why would you keep coming back to it? And then that gets back to your question, which is the influence that everyone's under. So, oh, Michelle, you had a bad experience with drinking last night. Well, you'll just drink less next time. Maybe there's a little bit more to it than that, but you have this social influence. And then if you start thinking about, the entertainment with the song, like country music, like you said, and here it's all kinds of different music that alcohol shows up in, or the television shows or the movies, you're just constantly reinforced that you did it wrong last night, but you should do it again because everybody else does. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's no other product is like that. No. That has bad results, and then people just say, no, but it's okay, keep trying. Huh?
Yeah. And I think that's why people have to read it, because it even to the point what you're saying about the cleverly shaped cups and how alluring it is and how normal it is. It's just so normal, isn't it? We've just normalized this. And also, so you do mention a lot about marketing, and it's really interesting. Whereas I said, when I've read, This Naked Mind, which was the book that made me stop, I think it was more about actually body and emotions and what we do. This is just another piece about how clever it is. But also what I liked is you didn't blame the companies either, because actually, we've all got to take responsibility. But at the same time, how, like you say, they don't actually have to do an awful lot. It's just everywhere. There's those three things. There's paid marketing. There's, did you say viral? So it's like just our...
Right, word of mouth. the way that we talk about it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what was the other one? Entertainment. So
And the entertainment. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So those three combine, and it's like no one has a chance because it starts when you're born, you know, and not that we can remember when we're born, but pretty soon after we're born, we start having birthday parties, and everybody's aunt and uncle and grandfather and cousin, whoever, just has the beer cooler or the wine in the fridge, and you're 3 years old and you just get used to it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's so huge. You know, the influence, it goes back so long, you
Yeah.
know?
And I remember when I don't like to remember too much, but when my firstborn was little, he's 9 now, I knew then I had to stop. You know, I was on a rocky road with alcohol. And I always remember we had a shop just on the corner of where we lived. And I always remember he was about 3, I think, my little lad. His name's Bear. And I heard him out of the hall with his dad. And his dad said, go and ask mummy if she wants anything from the shop. And instead of coming in, he just said, no, she'll probably want wine.
Wow.
And I heard that, and I just thought, and I didn't really think much about what I was doing at that time with regards to my kids, but I think that was the first time I just thought, oh, I knew it. I was already a little bit uncomfortable, and that was just like, oh my goodness, I need to stop. And then the battling with trying to stop then, it became a guilty thing, a guilty thing. That's another reason actually why I quite like your non-judgment with your son, because sometimes we make things taboo and then they want it.
Want them more. Yeah.
Because that's what happened with me. I wasn't allowed to drink when I was little. My mum and dad didn't drink. I was religious, and it was like no. So I ended up sneaking. You just did it anyway. So that's a really good point. But yeah, so my little boy said that, and even back then, so that was 5-6 years ago. Cringy. I just thought I don't want my children doing that. Yeah.
Well, and as I listen to what you're saying, I think so many people have the same experience and might be listening to what you just said and said, well, but that's just the way it is. It was just wine. He doesn't know what that is. Well, that's what happened to me. I just started drinking beer as a high schooler, now and then. And certainly it's not allowed in the US for you to drink, under the age of 21, but it's just kind of what teenagers did. And I didn't have too many of them. I don't remember getting sick very often or anything, but it's just sort of a social thing. It's not good for your brain development as a kid, it's not good. But because it was my experience with it with friends and family was similar to what your 9-year-old said about you from the other room, oh, mommy just wants wine. That's how I thought of beer, just wanted beer. And there is a physical brain development track that gets compromised because you're adding a chemical to it while your brain is developing as a kid. And I think that happened to me in addition to what you're describing throughout my young adult life. And it became, I'm just going to have a beer. I'm not feeling so great. I'm just going to have a beer. I'd like to feel better. I just am going to have a beer. I don't know. It's Friday, just not thinking anything of it. But it does have psychological and physical impact, to not only kids, but also to adults. And, as I look back on, relationships that I've had when I was drinking, I don't know how many arguments or insensitivities I expressed or had because I had alcohol in my system and it's just beer. Well, it's not. It makes me more sensitive. It makes me more argumentative. It makes me less, attentive to the conversation, which causes, more conflict. And now I find myself really understanding when I see other people drinking and they're, when you look at my Instagram, I kind of make jokes. One of the jokes that I have is that, you bring alcohol to the family reunion or the family barbecue, it doesn't always start a mess, but it could. No one really thinks of it. It could, but we're going to have it and we're not going to have a mess. Well, you don't know how it's going to affect that person, that family member's chemistry, whatever they're carrying around emotionally. And all of a sudden it turns into something with another family member that probably is fine. And the common element is alcohol. And people, oh, they're just drinking. The dysfunction that exists because of it, and again, getting back to my, no judgment and no poison, let's just be aware of it,
Yes, and that's it. And that's what your book does. It makes us aware of it. And from because of the story. So let's get onto those stories, because I can't think of any offhand. Well, I can, but I'm not going to say them here.
I think I know the one you're thinking of.
Well,
Maybe it's the one that we're thinking of is not unique to the US.
I don't
Are you
know.
thinking of the one where the people are at Fantasy Fest in Key West that are walking around with body paint?
I don't know. I don't think so.
No, remember that? Oh, all right. Well, I just let the cat out of the bag then.
Well, yeah, we'll save all of those, because, but I mean, they're not even, they're literally what people do. That's the thing. So I like to think that I would share some of the things that I've done purely because, you know, that vulnerability factor, but I'm almost too embarrassed to do that. I do remember once though, and waking up at a friend's house, and they were an older friend, so they were in their 50s, and we just stayed over there because we just used to go and have a party there. And this is not a bad thing, as in I've done some horrendous things, but this is just a bizarre, absolutely, where I think the guy who owned the house found my jeans shoved down the toilet. Just found my jeans shoved down the toilet. The next day, I mean, he got up and he washed them, everything. And by the time I got up in the morning, they were hanging up ready. Oh, bless him, like they were hanging up ready, clean for me. But just what the things that we do and so what you mentioned in the book is there's a scale, there's the big scale, from little things just to talking to someone. Now, even as people that don't drink, you know, when you're talking to a drunk person, it's just like, whoa, you know, even just slurring and you said something in the book, actually, you said everything we say is a howling punchline, and that really made me laugh, because and I don't want to glorify it at all, but it's just like, everybody knows what it's like to have this drinking. It's like this this social thing that everyone does, and we're just bypassing things that are actually not okay. Yeah, that's the reality of it. We're bypassing it and normalizing things that are not okay. And then you shared a few things, like about the excuses that we make with something. So for instance, if something happened and we wet our pants or whatever, we'd then justify that somehow, or we'd hide it somehow. And I'm sure we've all got examples, and this is why it's fun to talk about for me, because there's no shame. Like, and that's why, again, I think I will come across in the no shame, because I've done some really horrendous things. I've even been done drink driving. Actually, I lost my license for a year and a half, and that was when I was 24. I don't think I've ever shared that properly, and I'm not worried about sharing it. But what I mean is that it
happens all the time. Yeah, it does.
Impacted my life massively. It's ruined my relationships. You know, I've been physically violent. You know, like I've not behaved very well at all. And maybe some might say that's extreme, but actually, in my drinking days, someone was doing something, whether it was doing something they probably shouldn't have been, or hurting themselves, or, you know, so yeah. But the way it was written as well, like with the bubbles and the speech marks, it's just really relatable, because it is funny because it's so normal to us.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing that you probably can't see in the book is that, you know, what I've done, you see that it's side by, this is the text that you saw it online. So it's different when you buy the book, the text is on this side, and then sort of the examples of the text are over here. So these are carbonation bubbles, right? So back here in the book, right, these are supposed to be a glass full of ice cubes. So there's supposed to be quotes inside of the ice cubes in the glass that go with this text over here. But you know, that was me not being an author, wanting to be an author and keeping myself interested in, you know, what I was creating, you know, the message. So that's why when you buy the book, there's text, but there's also sketches in there. So I created all the sketches, and I figured out a way, to me, that was clever, that if I was going to read a book about alcohol, I have questions a long time ago. I don't have an older brother, and my dad drank a lot, so he wasn't really there for me in terms of my alcohol questions when I was younger. But I kind of wrote the book for somebody who's just starting to wonder what this is. And, you know, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or later on, if you start asking questions, I look at this as kind of an introduction, you know, to this is what you're going through. And as you're reading it, and I wonder if you had the same experience, you're kind of not only seeing yourself, but also seeing, oh, it's kind of a clarifying view of the landscape. And no wonder it's happening everywhere. Everyone's sort of teaching each other what to do and what to dismiss. And at that point, again, it reinforces the influence that everyone's under. So, your questions are really good. I'm super excited that you had a good time with it, because that was my intent. My intent is to draw you in with, this is not going to be a beating or a lecture. It's going to be kind of a sharing, almost kind of a comedic stance, but kind of in a wincing way,
Yeah, it was Quincy. Well, I chuckled because I was just like, in a way, I just thought I felt normal. But that's the thing, isn't it? I felt like, oh, phew, everyone's doing it. But yeah. Drink responsibly. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say your point about the drinking and driving, I've done it, everyone's done it, to the extent that, listen, you just shouldn't, right? So how drunk is somebody that they shouldn't be? I don't know, but when you're drinking, you shouldn't be driving, but it happens all the time. And
no, I mean, I lost my license. I got.
Oh yeah, no, that happens here too. That didn't happen to me, but my point about bringing up the drinking and driving is, I talked to a police officer a while back, and I forget the context of the conversation, but in the book, I give the police officer's point of view, which is sort of, well, these things happen. That was real. That's based on a real conversation, not with that guy that night, not with that police officer that was in the story, but another police officer I talked to. He said, there's a certain percentage of people on the road at all hours of day and night that are drinking and driving. So you really have to be careful when you're driving, because there are people that are drinking and driving. So that really struck me years ago. It came back around when we had this interaction with this police officer at my front door. And then, a little while later, after I was into writing the book, I was driving past one of the liquor stores near my house, and I see, during the middle of the day, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, driving past the liquor store, and I start to notice more. As I'm writing the book, I'm noticing more, right?
Yes.
For content for the book. And every time I drove past a liquor store during the day, and it's fine, they're open the day. There are people that are off that day. They want to get a pack of beer, a 6-pack of beer or a bottle of whiskey or whatever it is. But I also started to notice there were trade trucks, construction trucks, plumbers and electricians, and going into the liquor store and getting liquor in the middle of the day while they're working and they're driving. So it's not just driving and drinking, it's working and drinking. I'm like, this is bigger than I thought, and again, just to wrap up this piece of what I'm talking about, until I really started to look, I didn't see it either. How much everyone is under the influence, and not only driving and drinking, but also the electrician that comes to your home, or the plumber, or the guy that's just driving next to you on his way wherever. It's kind of scary, that the police are aware of this, and sometimes they pull people over and sometimes they don't, but they're aware that in this group of cars and traffic, a number of them are drunk.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
It is nuts. And I think I started noticing when I stopped drinking, because I remember going to the cinema, and it was at the stage where I think I knew that I was definitely decided on that path of not drinking again. But it was those early months where I really had to, make that conscious effort that I'm not drinking. And I was sat there and I just saw it. I saw it with new eyes. I saw that advert with new eyes, at how fun it looked and how I was almost missing out on life and a good time because I was no longer boozing. It's so eye-opening, and I'm not sure whether until you really do decide how you want to live, I think, that you start to notice how influenced everyone is. So I was going to say about, because you mentioned about your son, the conversation with your son, and how it says drink responsibly on the alcohol. So it's almost like they've kind of put that disclaimer, drink responsibly.
Yeah. Do you have that in the UK? That disclaimer that you do? Yeah.
Yeah. It just says pregnant women, no, and drink responsibly. Or no, it says pregnant women. There's some guidelines anyway.
We don't have guidelines. All we have is drink responsibly. That's it. It's not on the bottle. It's only on the advertisements. That's it.
Wow. It's not on the bottle either. Wow, I think it is on the bottles here. And so in the book, you've written, I've got it here, so it's in red, the red and the white. Oh, you won't see that. You won't see it red and white if you go blind.
Oh,
So you've got here, you've got about difficult to gauge the influence, and you've kind of written your own things that what it should say. Like alcohol is a mind-altering substance. If you find yourself insulting people, embarrassing yourself, or attempting physical acts that you wouldn't otherwise, please slow your drinking before you cause regrettable damage. And there's quite a few of those as well. That you mentioned health as well, and also about being that sort of person that says, right, last one, and then you have more and you have more, because everybody's got different relationship, haven't they, with alcohol?
Yeah, and that's my sort of, again, another shade of the no judgment rainbow that which I can't see anyway, but I just see different people's personalities and different people's relationships with alcohol being whatever they are. And the common element is it just is what it is. And I had too much last night, I won't do it today, but then they do it again. There's one of the jokes that I make in the book about, someone who's drinking less, sitting, or not drinking at all, sitting next to a couple guys or girls that are drinking a little bit more. And one of them, hey, can you switch seats with me before so-and-so comes back from the bathroom? Because sitting next to so-and-so is like sitting next to a jet engine with, how much they're talking and how loud, and it's a lot, and people don't realize that. So a lot of my points in the book have to do with, can we just pay attention to ourselves before it turns into arguments, let alone drinking and driving? And, I guess that this piece that I just want to wrap up that we're talking about right now is that, just because you don't drink every day, and just because you're not drinking while you're breastfeeding or pregnant or driving, doesn't mean that you don't have something that needs to be adjusted. And I'm not even calling it a problem. I'm saying you don't even know that you have questions. You don't even know that your irritability in your house with your loved ones has to do with this substance that you've been underestimating since you were taught when you were born, so.
Yes. Getting up in the morning after, I remember it, because when I stopped drinking, it changed my life in so many ways, so many ways. I'm going to actually touch on that because there's a page that I'm just remembering now, and I want to say about it that's not even a big subject, but it was one I read twice because I just found it, I don't know, I just thought, wow. And thinking back to the difference of me. So my children don't even go to school, but I can imagine having to get up, or the times that I've had to get up in the morning and go somewhere with a fuzzy head. Only a couple of glasses of wine, slight fuzzy head, and then children, that snapping easily at our kids for not putting their shoes on, or just easily being irritated, easily argumentative, and all of these things. It's really sad to me. It's really sad to me. And I think that's why I got so upset reading that about, your neighbors, because, the relationship issues that it got, and like you say, we don't even realize the influence that it has on us. And that's why, for anyone that's listening, it's not to make anyone wrong. It's just, let's get aware of ourselves and who we're being.
Yes, that's exactly it. And the relationship that I describe with my neighbors that, I knew very little about, I really felt for them too. So I forgot that, you said that you are having, misty eyes or tears about them. And wow, I forgot about that. But as soon as you reminded me, oh yeah, that is sad, because at the end of the book, I come back around to, what my guess happened, a day or two later, and why she continues to deal with him. This is a piece I wanted to talk about with you too. She doesn't want him to have a problem. That's bad. She would rather him, and I'm not talking about my neighbors, I'm talking about people in general. This wife would rather her husband be able to try to continue to drink like a normal person, even though he's making a mess, rather than admit that he has a problem, because then that's worse to have a problem than someone who's actually trying to get it together. And what people don't understand is that there is a progression, there's a line, and as soon as you cross that line into addiction, there is no going back. I don't know how far you got. I went all the way. I can't go back. I tried. I don't know where my neighbor is, But that's the conversation that I would like the characters in the book are Camilla and Lorenzo. That's not their real names, but Camilla and Lorenzo really need to have a conversation about where are you relative to that line? Because if you've crossed it, yeah, you can't drink anymore and you shouldn't try. You're just going to make more messes. And then that comes into the last piece I wanted to mention, which has to do with those people that do cross the line, like myself.
Yeah.
I can't, I'll make a mess. I could go back, it'll be a mess, but I've chosen not to. I also have had to learn over the last period of time that I no longer drink to deal with people that judge me because you can't do what the rest of us do. That's the other influence that everyone is under, to look at people that either choose not to or have forced to be chosen not to. And then I think about all the people that I know that have been in and out of AA, because when you go to AA, you constantly watch a revolving door of people. And I've also been to a rehabilitation program. They're in and out of there too. It's really sad that they're trying to do something that they can't do anymore because of the tapes that play in their head and the people they continue to spend time with. Say, listen, you seem fine. You should have another drink. If people only knew, and I don't know how many people do, but more people knew, there's a line. And once you cross it, let's understand that we've done that. And then let's also understand that if someone has crossed it, let's not think less of them. They're choosing well for themselves by not drinking anymore, as opposed to less than, Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is another big subject. And I think we talked about it when I spoke to you last month, I think it was, or a few weeks ago. And so from Annie Grace's point of view, This Naked Mind, because I'm not comparing at all, but it's like these two big pieces that were actually not designed to drink alcohol, full stop, and so she actually challenges the whole, can you moderate? Can you actually moderate? So this subject is big, but it's one, I think, if we want to live, like at the moment, with everything that's going on in the world situation, for me personally, this past year, my health, and I've always been pretty healthy, I suppose, even no, actually, when I remember coming home from a drinking holiday once and getting pneumonia, and I know it was my body just I had poisoned it. I had so much that it kicked into these detoxification symptoms. And at the moment with all of this as well, I've really been deciding, I've making other changes in my life at the moment, actually quite amazing, because ones that I've wanted to make for so long and it was hard, and now they're coming from an intrinsic place of, right, I want to do this, I want to get fit, I want to do all these things, and I do think if we want to be healthy, we need to be aware of our habits. And the page, though, I do want to say that I mentioned, because it might not be a big deal to you, but it was just when you mentioned that, and again, it was written in that way that's like story, like when someone was coming to your house that you don't drink and everything was broken, and they kept kind of, and then in the end they went down the pub. Do you remember that part? So
oh yeah. I thought of those as two girls visiting each other, or two sisters. Yeah. And then, right, so it was, you have a question about that, or should I talk about it?
Yeah, talk about it. Yeah.
So the way that I looked at it, again, I was trying to sort of create an example of, living in a way where alcohol is in your house. And I pictured these two girls being in their 20s, and the world is their oyster, and I've got my job and I've got my friends and everything's rolling. And, this was somebody who just bought their first house. So they're like, I'm really, my financial life is working, and come on in, I haven't seen you in a while. And, I've got, whatever kind of beer and wine and liquor in the house, I'll just make you a drink. And the friend that was visiting, like, okay, because they had gone to college together and, kind of gone in different directions, but we're still friends. And you don't realize when you haven't seen someone in a while and you start spending more and more time with alcohol, if your other friend that you went to school with, or a relative that's coming to visit, if they have not lived that same lifestyle, the two of you are very, very different. And that's the example I was trying to make in there, that as she's walking her, her friend or sister or cousin around the house, yep, there's my bike that we used to ride when we were younger, but, the tires need air and it's all dusty. And, this is my second bedroom. This is where you're going to be sleeping. And this is actually my recovery room, because on Sundays I, watch TV and binge eat all day. because the rest of I've got to get ready for work the next day. Isn't it cool though? Because it's also a bit, and I'm going, I know these people, and, I just want people to, when they're reading the book, to not just see themselves and see their friends, but also see how big this is and how it's reinforced in each other in a way that it's kind of not okay, but not in a not judgmental, not in a judgmental way, just in a, are you sure you want to do that? And then the story and the examples get further and further with, the ridiculous bar bills and, the tattoos and the things that you do because you start living a lifestyle where you don't really understand the stuff that you're posting on Instagram about, isn't my life awesome? And your friends and family are looking at your Instagram post and going, there's something wrong with him or her, it's just the alcohol. There's too much alcohol,
And the whole life is lived around that lifestyle. And the bit as well was almost like where the house was deteriorating because you spend so much time drinking. That was one thing when I stopped.
Oh, that one, yeah.
That one, so she was like, the house is falling apart, and yet she was just like, let's go down the pub. Just almost no time for self-care and self-respect. And I can relate to that.
The pub was self-care. The pub was entertainment. The pub was, self-care. And it's sad. I obviously, I wrote the book. It's been a couple of years since I've written it. I wrote it the year before last, but again, because of where we live now, the stories, I see it now. Before it was, leave the house, go out to dinner, go to the movies and see it. Now I live in it. This is a high-rise, a luxury rental community. So I thought that it was going to be people my age, and further along. No, it's a bunch of kids in their late 20s and 30s that are partying all the time. They have no idea. They have no, and the maintenance guys that come to my place, that's one of the things I take advantage of when you have a rental as opposed to a house that you own. In a house that you own, you have to fix everything yourself. Well, now I get to call somebody, and the guys come in and I have such a fun conversation with them because they're like, wow, you have a nice place. I said, this whole place is nice. They say, oh no, the other apartments that we go in are like an absolute wreck. And it gets into my head about, the partying that I see at the pool and in the hallways and wherever, and they're living like the story that you're mentioning in the book. It's real.
It is. And I remember for me as well, because I used to sort of crack open a bottle of wine at 6 o'clock ish, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I couldn't do a lot after that. So I couldn't read a book because I tried read the same page a few times. After one glass of wine, I'm not saying I got drunk. So it's 5 hours of, from early evening till, if I wasn't out anyway drinking, it would be at home for me. And it'd be like, I'll put it off till tomorrow, put off painting the room, put off, workouts sometimes. I remember I did used to stay fit, to be fair, but sometimes it'd be like, oh, let's just get out of the pub instead, just self-neglect as well. It's and you mentioned all these things, all of the, so much that we probably haven't even touched on all of them. I've written, we've hiding the evidence, avoidance tactics, there's loads. I like the last page, that you said, I think I might read that a little bit, or I don't know if you want me to, but what you said to your son about they are reality at the end, because you've got the last page where you've got perception and question. So people think that drinking alcohol is a safe and civilized part of adult socializing, but the question we need to ask is, so why are there so many unsafe, uncivilized and immature stories about adults drinking alcohol, from jumping off roofs to falling downstairs and dying? I've known 2 people die from falling downstairs. That's quite, I haven't known them personally, they're friends of that's quite a big statistic, really, isn't it, for one human to know 2 people that have passed. So I think it's worth, do you mind me reading those questions?
Yeah, feel free, of course.
Drinking, so the perception is drinking alcohol responsibly means control is always a choice. And so you've said the question to ask is, why is it easy for some and not easy for others? Because it's not just a general thing. I don't have a problem with alcohol because I don't drink every day. And so this is a good one, because this was me. So then why do you become uncomfortable when you can't get a drink in situations you associate with alcohol? You said recently, didn't you, about your son's birthday party or something? It's just like, we want a drink when we go places. It's the first thing I used to look for. If there wasn't a drink, I'd be like, this is boring, I want to go home. And then you've got reality, alcohol. And I think this is a really brilliant line. Alcohol is a mind-altering, habit-forming substance that affects everyone differently and has all of us under the influence, whether we're drinking or not. And I was just like, wow. Yeah, so good, Craig.
I super appreciate you recognizing all that, because I put, you know, almost rocket science level attention and focus, you know, for so long to be able to get this out of me. But then also sort of present it in a way that I would want to read. So not only am I sifting through the stuff that's meaningful, and also identifying what it means, but also arranging it in a way with words and then a flow that would get somebody to say, I really need to take a look at myself, you know? And then the thing that I would like people to get from this also is that my heart beats for people that get divorced because of drinking, and the families get wrecked because of drinking. And while I don't think it's the alcohol's fault, or, you know, in and of itself, or I think this is just my opinion, or I think it's the person's fault. I think when a certain emotionality and a mentality mixes with alcohol, it creates a problem. And without an awareness, and you're with your, you know, your significant other, and you have kids in the house, you're not paying attention to how much you're kind of, I'm not saying damage, but affecting them, you know, and that little thing starts to get bigger, because we as human beings, you know, our feelings get hurt, and then we catalog that. And, you know, in my relationships, there've been those where I've been drinking and those where both of us have been drinking, and it doesn't create a way to like understand how to get along. It messes it up. But the way that it's portrayed, you know, in those places, the word of mouth, no one talks about the bad stuff. They just talk about the party. The same thing on, you know, entertainment, our television, our movies, and our songs. Most of them are pretty positive. And then of course, you know, you throw the advertisements in there, the paid advertisements, everything is, you know, bonfires and weddings and, you know, good news. So why shouldn't we, you know, what gets in our, why shouldn't I be in my own kitchen and having a beer once in a while? Well, because it's an addictive substance, and once in a while turns into a little more often, and then that turns into, you know, someone resenting, you know, growing a resentment. So I would like people to understand that are already together. You're kind of damaging this precious thing that you got together based on, you know, your connection. It dissolves a connection. And then the other thing I'd like people to understand too is that when you get together with someone else that looks at alcohol not the way we're talking about it, you two are going to have a problem. You need to be on the same page. You know, I have family members that are on that page, you know, not, they just carefree and I'm going to be fine. They should get together with somebody who's going to make a mess too. I wish you guys the best. You're going to make a mess together. Where my heart has a problem is where someone believes someone can change someone else, with that someone not being aware and not wanting to be aware. That hurts my heart, you know. As much as you love him or her, if they don't see what you see, it's only going to get worse, you know. And then you bring kids into that. I'm like, oh, you know, really. So that's another reason why I wrote this. You know, I'd like to eventually reach people in that way too. If you're contemplating getting married and, you know, the other person says, that guy's full of it, yeah, you know, you might want to take a look at your dynamic, you know.
Absolutely. And it's important. It's important. And I love what you said, and I love your passion. I love that you've written it, and it's such a clever book too. It's so clever because of the way you've written it. I mean that as well, because I love to read. I've read loads of books, but it was just it was an easy read because of the length of it and how it was written, but it was just powerful. And it's written in a way, I mean, story is a great way to write anyway, you know, like I was gripped from the start, but even from the middle bit, when you started presenting facts and that self-awareness piece where you can't not read that and relate to it. even if you laugh all the way through, it's gonna trigger something. Like, is that what we want? That's why I think it's good that you did go quite extreme. You know, you mentioned about when I'm gonna say what is it's a threesome that you said.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You said Wendy, wine only Wendy, and you know, you named these people from work and what they did and all that. I mean, my partner, you know, something happened at his work. I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to say that, but you know, it did. And so, yeah, because of alcohol. No, that's why my marriage ended. Well, it was on the way there anyway, so it wasn't just that, but it was like the nail in the coffin, you know. So,
but that's an example of what we just talked about a minute ago. Like, if no matter who it is that we're talking about, you know, you brought up everyone. You're underestimating what that is doing to you, because your only awareness, your only consciousness of this thing you're doing is fun and harmlessness and carefree. No, it's not.
it's not.
Not all the time.
No, it's not.
You know,
So,
and at the same time, let me just say this, that when I say that, I just want to keep coming back to non-judgment and awareness. You know, I think everyone should drink as much as they want to, really. Just get together with someone else who drinks as much as you want to, because that's what creates the problem. And then while you're, maybe even if you're two people that are together, drinking as much as you want to, and it's a lot, you're kind of numbing your, and this gets into your other stuff, right? Your awareness of the world and the way that it flows. And isn't it beautiful? When you're drinking, it's a lot of fun, but you're not really recognizing, today it's so beautifully warm. Today it's a little cool, but I like it. You know, the sun is out, it's beautiful. The moon, your connection and your awareness of life in general and everything that's wonderful, your brain gets kind of numbed. And that's kind of sad too, you know?
well, it is now, yeah, because you obviously see what I'm about. That's it, that the beauty. But it is also, it's clever because it's romanticized. So alcohol, for me, I'd see a sunset and I'd think, oh, like I was missing alcohol, I need to have some to make, like, and now I see the sunset and I can just, well, it's still just, it's overwhelming. I don't think of alcohol because that's the hit, you know, the sunset's the hit that I want. But yeah,
but that's the brilliance of the marketing that I get into too. And it's that your experience, as wonderful as it is, would be improved because you've been taught to have a drink with the sunset. You've been taught to have a drink with celebrating someone's wedding, celebrating someone's anniversary, celebrating someone's birthday. It only makes it better. And I'm like, that is, I don't know of any other more brilliant marketing pitch on the planet. But the reason it's so powerful is because you're consuming a mind-altering substance while you're being sold how wonderful it is at the same time. It's almost like you're, what do you call it? You're ingesting delusion, you know, and then wanting more of it, because the sunshine and the sunset and the whatever would be so much better if I had a drink. Whoa, no wonder that, you know, the sales are growing.
Exactly, 1.5 million. And you know, I just popped it into my head. It's like that there does come a point though, it's almost like amnesia. It's like amnesia, you know, you have something and you remember the good times. It's that romance with it and that relationship with it, which is, again, it's coming back to our relationship with alcohol, and most people are not aware. And I think more and more people are starting to be, you know, in my circles, that there's not many people that drink now. I go out to a place and I've done, you've probably seen my stories. I'm going out, I'm dancing, I'm doing things now. I'm learning to be intimate with other humans, which is so challenging without alcohol. And that's, I mean, that's another story, because, you know, sex and drinking was part of my thing. And now, you know, it's really different. It's really, really different experiences. So just before we wrap this up, what about your other books? Because on your Instagram it says one of 6 or something.
No, one of 3.
Okay, oh, sorry.
The way that I've always looked at my work to sort of make people aware of my perspective, you know, and maybe it helps their perspective, is number one, let me break it down, a lot of information into a relatively easy to understand and short book. And then let me break that down. And if you like this first one and you have more questions about the mess that it creates, the second one has to do with the mess. and that's Rethinking Not Drinking. So I'm working on that one next. And Rethinking Not Drinking has to do with the merry-go-round of, I'm thinking about not drinking because I'm drinking, you know, but really that loop is what creates the mess. You know, this is not just someone who's, listen, I'm fine, it's your problem. Now the next book has to do with, it's starting to grab a hold of me, and I'm doing something that I know I shouldn't be. Why am I doing this? Why are my pants in the, you know, in the bath? That's the second book. So the third book has to do with what we touched on a minute ago, which has to do with the judgment of people that are really trying to recover, and you're telling them they're broken. They can feel you judging them that they're broken. Now, as soon as you get to the point where you're fine, and I'm fine with people that look at me and say I'm broken, sounds good. But there are people that early in their recovery, after they've crossed the line, that have trouble with it because they can feel the judgment that they're doing it wrong, that they're broken, that they should be able to go back, and then they can't stick with it. And some of those people, you know, addiction ends up in 3 places: jail, divorce. So 4 places: jail, divorce, bankruptcy, death. 4 places. That's where addiction ends up, always. Jail, divorce, bankruptcy, death. So that last book has to do with when you cross the line. Again, I'm talking to both sides. The people that have the problem, stay with it. This is the way you're going to be judged. The people that don't have the problem, who are judging, maybe you guys need to learn a little bit more who you're friends with, who's in your family, you know, that's struggling with this. You'd like them to recover. You'd like them to be around for a while. So those are the 3 books.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, and the reason there's 3 is because they're not all going to speak to the same person. I don't know who would read all 3. You know, the first one is just awareness. The second one has to do with the mess. And the third one has to do with after you cross the line. Now, as a parent, if this gets to be as, I don't know, helpful as I'd like it to be, as a parent, I think all 3 books should be read, because you're basically raising someone who's going out into the world, and you'd like them to be prepared to deal with all of this influence.
Yeah, I was going to say this actually, because when this is, you know, when we release this conversation, and as I start to speak about it, I think that this, your book, your first book especially, because that's the one I've read at the moment, is brilliant for parents. It's just absolutely spot on for parents. And I've not read one like that. I've not read, this is unique and important. And I just want to say though, as well, at the end, how touched I was with you as a dad and as a parent. Amazing, Craig. And your son, like, just wow, what wisdom your child has. Well, he's not a child so much, but what wisdom. I just was blown away by that, and so happy. I was so freaking happy that he's wise enough to just have this awareness being so young.
Yeah, you're gonna make me cry, because I'm so proud of him. You know, I get a
Good.
little bit going. I'm so proud of him and the conversations we've had. And honestly, I just, somehow or another, you know, he asked the questions and I showed up with the answers. And, you know, you might call that divine, you might call that, I don't know what, but I feel blessed by it. I have a huge amount of gratitude that I don't think he's ever going to have the problem that I had. So that's one of the reasons why the book starts with the conversation with him and then ends with the conversation with him, just as maybe a guideline for people who are like, how do I talk to my kids about this? And, you know, don't get distracted with the way that my kid is asking questions or what we're saying, but just that it's just an open conversation and there's nothing wrong. You know, just start it, and don't start it when he's 17 or she's, you know, 18 years old, or it's got to start earlier, you know?
Yes, yeah. And again, then you didn't judge you didn't make alcohol wrong, you didn't make your neighbor wrong, you didn't make things wrong. You just were shining a light on all these pieces to expand their awareness and expand their consciousness, which is just, and what an amazing subject to do that. Is so needed. And that's why I wanted to speak to you about it. So thank you. Thank you so much.
It was a lot of fun. It was so much. I'm gonna have to go to the gym after this because I'm so excited. I'm gonna have to get up.
Get that energy out.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, maybe we can do it again. Maybe you can do some Instagram lives as well to talk about it just further, because I'm the same. I would talk about this forever. In fact, I haven't even got started yet with I think our journeys have been very different, because I'm not sure whether you would think I crossed that line. I'm not sure. I'd have to probably tell you more about what I was doing and my relationship with it. But I mean, I don't know. But Yeah, it's very good. Anyway, that we'll end that now, and I really look forward to getting this out to people and talking about it more, because I think it's going to be have such a big impact, especially on our children. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Michelle.